It's just about a bunch of dogs traveling to a big tree to have a party together. Hello everybody, happy Frog Friday. My name is Carly, and today I'm going to be talking about the top 10 books that have impacted me throughout my life. I got this video idea from Colin over at Colin's Corner. One of his first videos ever that he did was the top 6 most influential reads, and I thought it was a great idea for his viewers to get to know him, so I wanted to do this so you could get to know me a little bit better. But when I was trying to narrow down the list, I decided I would go for a top 10 instead of a 6. So I'm going to go in chronological order of when I read them and just kind of explain what they mean to me. The first half of this list is going to be for my childhood, so there are children's books and YA books, so if you just want to skip to the adult books, then you'll probably want to go to around the number 6 mark. So the first book up is actually Go Dog Go by P.D. Eastman, and this little picture book is probably the first book I can remember being obsessed with. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of this anymore. My mom has since given it away. Oh well. You know what? Another kid can enjoy it. I absolutely love dogs, and this book may be one of the reasons why that love began. For the longest time, up until about a few years ago, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, and I applied to college as a pre-vet student, but then I ended up working at a vet, and I decided it was not for me, so I switched paths after that. But for a long time, I really wanted to work with dogs. It's just about a bunch of dogs traveling to a big tree to have a party together. While I chose this particular book, you could probably open this up to any book that had dogs or animals as the main character in it. I was just obsessed with anything animal related as a kid. Well, I say as a kid, but as you can see from the rest of my bookshelf and my channel, it's not just as a kid, I still love animals. I had a bunch of collections of bedtime stories, and in any of them, I would always choose to read the ones with dogs in them over and over again rather than picking a new story out. Alright, next up, I'm gonna group books 2 and 3 together, and that's Muffin, Pigdoom, and the Keeper by Paul Warren, and The Extraordinary Adventures of Ordinary Basil by Wiley Miller. These were both bedtime stories that as a kid my parents would read to me. Muffin Pigdoom is a fantasy picture book about a family whose savings are stolen by the oppressive militia of the kingdom. Muffin Pigdoom is the main character who travels through the kingdom to take back what was stolen from his family. This book just makes me think of my dad because he was always the one that read it to me. Since my mom for some reason hated the book, I still don't know why to this day she hated it. I think she just hated the ogres in it and was like grossed out by it or something. And then The Extraordinary Adventures of Ordinary Basil is an illustrated chapter book about a boy named Basil who lives in a lighthouse. One day, a professor recruits him and another child to travel on his hot air balloon to another dimension to save a fantasy city from being destroyed by a villain. And I grouped these two books together because while the first one reminded me of my dad, this one reminds me of my mom. When I was younger, my mom worked as a flight attendant, and this was actually one of the books that she picked up for me at the airport. So even if my dad was the one reading it to me, it always made me think of my mom. Now for number 4, sticking with early childhood, I wanted to throw in a nonfiction book that may have been my most frequently checked out book for my elementary school, and that is Sharks from the DK Eyewitness book series. If you've watched some of my other videos before, one thing you probably know about me is that one of my favorite things to do is to walk along the beach or a creek and find fossilized shark teeth. I've done it for as long as I can remember, and it's a hobby that's been passed down for generations. And since I collect shark teeth, I became interested in sharks in general. I just wanted to know everything I could about them, so I absolutely love this book. Although I probably spent more time staring at the different pictures throughout the book than actually reading it, but I definitely still learned a lot from it and remember it very fondly. Now for number 5, I'm going to move on to middle school formative books, and I'm going to start with the Gone series by Michael Grant. I was obsessed with these stories as a kid. It's about a dome that suddenly comes over a small town and all the adults within the town just disappear. It looks at how the kids organize and figure out how to live in this new situation. And around the same time, I started watching my favorite TV show, Lost, for the first time, so I was a sucker for anything survival related. I love the multiple POVs, the superpowers, the mysteries, and the scary realistic aspects of how quickly people can turn evil when there's power up for grabs. And since this was a childhood favorite, I'm sure you can understand why I was so excited to pick up Under the Dome by Stephen King, since it's pretty much the same premise. Now for number 6, I actually chose a play, and that's 12 Angry Men by Reginald Rose. This is the only one of the list that I was forced to read in school, and the entire story takes place in one room. You follow a group of jurors deliberating. It starts with 11 jurors immediately voting guilty and wanting to get the process over with as quickly as possible so that they can go home. Only one juror considers the defendant to be possibly innocent and tries his best to get the other jurors to take in all the evidence and think through their clear reasoning rather than rush through this important decision. I think it really instilled a sense of fighting for what's right and avoiding groupthink. It stressed the importance of critical thinking and communication. And it definitely got me interested in ethics and really diving deeper into what my own beliefs and morals were. Now for number 7, I'm going to fast forward quite a bit, about 7 years. I pretty much stopped reading all books throughout high school and college. I only started reading again late in my 3rd year of college. I was studying abroad, and part of the program included spending 2 weeks in the middle of the Amazon rainforest at a research station. We were very far away from civilization. It took us 6 hours throughout a boat, then we went on to a bus, then we went on to another boat to get to this station. So it was very deep into the forest. We had no service or internet access for those 2 weeks. So there was a lot of free time to explore or find other things to do with my time. And they had a small library of old books there that other people had brought and left there over the years. And my professor recommended one of these books to me, and that was Tropical Nature, Life and Death in the Rainforests of Central and South America by Adrian Forsyth and Ken Miyata. It's a nonfiction collection of essays on various topics about species found in the rainforest. And I put this on the list because it made me realize how accessible and interesting nonfiction books can be, and it also made me excited to stay in my field and made me feel like I really made the right decision when I switched to this major, which if you don't know, I did just graduate with a degree in wildlife ecology and conservation. So this book really made me feel sure of that decision. And it was super cool to get to read about something and at the same time get to experience it all around you. So I'd read something in this book and then the next day see it in action during one of our class hikes. So that was super cool. I'm probably about due for a reread of this one now. It was super interesting, and I did say it was accessible, so it's super easy to read. You don't need to know anything really about anything before reading it. If you have been interested at all about anything that happens in the rainforest, I definitely recommend picking it up. And it's not like you even have to read all of it. Each chapter is unrelated from each other, so you can just pick it up and flip to a random one that interests you or skip a chapter, doesn't matter. Next up, number 8. While the last book was the first one that I had read in a while, it didn't really make me pick up another book. The book that reignited my love of reading is a very polarizing book, so it's kind of a weird one to say that I love. The book is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I went from reading nothing at all for 7 years to finishing this 700-something page book in under 2 weeks. It follows 4 friends living in New York City throughout their lives from their early 20s to, I want to say, about their 50s. It's controversial because many people like to refer to it as trauma porn for its graphic descriptions of horrible abuse and events that continue to happen over and over again to this one main character. It's definitely a book that you want to look at the trigger warnings before reading if you're affected by anything. And while some people think that it's completely unrealistic, I've also seen people on the other side who have experienced similar situations say that they love the book and think it's a good representation, and that the uncomfortableness that you feel while reading it is unfortunately how it feels to live with those experiences. So I don't want to invalidate those people's experiences that say that it actually is realistic. While I may not have experienced those things and thinks that it's super blown out of proportion, for some people it's very relatable. So I just wanted to put that view out there. And while I take issue with some of the things that the author has said in interviews about the book, I will hold a special place in my heart for it because it was the book that got me started on my reading journey as an adult. The next book for number 9 is going to be Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. In all honesty, I only wanted to read this book because it's mentioned multiple times in the TV show Lost, which again is my favorite show. It's a satirical anti-war book following a bunch of eclectic American soldiers fighting in Italy during World War II. I didn't really have any idea what it was about going into it, so I thought I was going to hate it because war stories do not interest me at all. However, it's on this list because it's the only book that I've ever read that's actually made me laugh. It was something I was not expecting at all, but there's so many sections in it that I thought were hilarious just because of how ridiculous they were. Some of the characters are they're just ridiculous. They really are. I recommend this one, but I know it can be a slog to get through. Maybe go for the audiobook as well if you're reading it, because it is a pretty dense book. It's over 400 pages. And then the last book, book 10 on this list, is going to be the first King book that I ever read, and that is Cujo. I was interested in reading a King book, but I had no idea where to start since he has 80-something, 70-something books. I always forget the number because it always changes. And I finally decided to choose Cujo because because it is a nickname for my dog, Hugo. We sometimes call him Cujo or Hugo or Hugo Cujo, Cujo Hugo. You get the gist. My parents call him it all the time because he can be kind of a devil sometimes. I'd never seen the movie before, so I thought finding out the story behind his nickname would be a good idea. I'm sure you're aware, but Cujo is the story of a dog that gets rabies and terrorizes a town. It's on this list because it's the book that got me to become a constant reader. I read the whole book during an 800-mile road trip last summer, and since then I've read somewhere around 30-something more of his books. So it definitely hooked me right from the start, even though I know a lot of people have complaints about that one being really slow and overrated, but I love it. Alright, those were the top 10 most influential books in my life. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Let me know down below in the comments some of the most influential books that you have read in your life. Now, for today's frog fact, I decided I would read one actually straight out of the Tropical Nature book, and I'm gonna read it from the chapter 14, Singing in the Rain. A little froggy illustration for you. So this is obviously the frog chapter, and I just want to read a little quote at the beginning here. So this one says, "I like the look of frogs and their outlook, and especially the way they get together in wet places on warm nights and sing about sex." And that quote is from Archie Carr in The Windward Road. And something I didn't even realize until this minute is that that guy, Archie Carr, probably means nothing to you, but he is actually the man that essentially created my major at UF. He was the first one to get a biology degree in UF, and he was a sea turtle biologist, very famous. And we actually have a building named after him, the Carr building. And the frog herpetology class that I actually took this past year was inside of this building, so it's pretty cool. That's a quote in here. Never realized that before. Here is the frog fact from this book. "Even deep within the forest, far from any pond, stream, or puddle, the chirps and barks of other species can be heard high in the canopy or on the litter-covered forest floor. In the upper Amazon basin in eastern Ecuador, as many as 80 species of frogs may live within sight and sound of each other, a richness of species in a single square mile that rivals that of the entire North American continent." The species richness that is within the Amazon rainforest is crazy, and that's why it's one of my favorite places in the world now. I really hope that I'll get to go back someday. But yeah, thanks again for watching. I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.